Chris Mannix is here, host of the Chris Mannix Show, weekday afternoons, NBC Sports Radio, the 24-hour sports talk network. Download the app, subscribe to the Mannix podcast. NBA fans, what's happening out there? Oh, boy, Chris, a lot of great NBA stories post-Christmas here as we kind of get into that NBA season. How are you, my friend?
I'm good, man. How you doing?
We're doing well, and I got to start off with, I know about a month ago, I'd been out on vacation, so that's about the last time we spoke. We talked very highly of Joel Embiid, and you're seeing what he's done. I know like what your thoughts are on, and a lot of people around the league look at this guy, but you know, the thought of that this guy hasn't played basketball in like 2.5 years. Do you think there's still more rust to kind of be knocked off this guy, and that we're going to see even more in this second half from this kid?
You know, I don't know if it's rust necessarily that has to be knocked off, but I do think, as is the case with any, you know, technically first-year player as Embiid is, there's room for growth. I mean, I've had the opportunity to watch him in practice a few times over the course of this season, and as every practice winds down, you see a lot of players really start to work on the things that aren't part of their game right now. And you know, Embiid is shooting a great percentage of three-point range, but it's not like he's shooting staggering numbers. I think he's going to continue to evolve and become a more prolific three-point shooter as the season goes on. I think you're going to see him play more off the dribble offensively too, as this season progresses. So I think the rust is largely gone, but I think the evolution of his game really is just kind of beginning.
Yeah, it's amazing. You know, the game last night, or 2 nights ago, I guess it was, where, you know, he played 30 minutes, which I guess is a good sign that his minutes are kind of going up a little bit. But you just see when he catches the ball, the defenders don't really know what to do with him. I guess that's a sign that these teams respect his three-point shot. And once that putting the ball on the floor parts of his game gets a little bit more fluid, he is going to be scary good. The question is, as we ask a lot, Chris, and we've seen a little bit of him now, who's the pairing? Okafor doesn't seem to work. Did you get to see any of him and Noel a little bit the other night? And does that feel or look a little better?
A little bit, and I'd certainly like to see more, because I think Noel and Embiid is a more organic and natural pairing than Okafor and Embiid. I mean, Okafor and Embiid, you get two guys that are pure centers. Simple as that. And you can't play two centers together. The defensive numbers were awful, as you know. Noel, even though he's not a floor spacer offensively, I think is better equipped to play power forward with Embiid. Now, it's not a slam dunk by any stretch that it's going to work, but I think there's a higher probability that it does work. So I'd like to see more of them playing together. But ultimately, the way the league has gone, you'd have to be surprised if it's anything but a Embiid and some type of Ryan Anderson type of floor space that create room for him to operate, because as his ball handling improves, as his post play improves, you're going to need guys that are getting defenders out of his way. You don't want his teammates being so unable to score offensively that the paint gets packed in on them. So I think long term, you're likely to see Philadelphia look outside the organization and try to find some type of floor spacing for.
What about the guy they have here now? If you're Brian Colangelo, what's your take on Ersan Ilyasova, who has said he wants to stay? He seems to be fitting in pretty good. Now, I know he's bouncing around the league a lot, but he seems like, you know, having Embiid play with him might make a lot of guys better.
Yeah, good player, and certainly I think in a reserve role could be effective on a team that hopes to win something. But Ilyasova's best days were a few years back, and I don't think you're going to see a return to a guy that should be a starter on a team hoping to go somewhere. But that prototype is kind of what you're looking for at the 4 spot. Somebody that can space the floor, somebody that can pull defenders out deeper and give Embiid room to operate. A younger version and maybe a little bit of a better version of Ilyasova is kind of what you're looking for. And look, when Ben Simmons comes back, I do think you're going to see Simmons and Embiid in that front court, the 5-4 positions, respectively. I think that you'll see him playing some power forward eventually, and that'll be a really versatile and a really dangerous lineup.
Hey, have they made enough strides this season for you as an observer of what the Sixers have gone through? Do you look at a team that still only has 9 wins? It's not like they're about 500. Do you look at them and say, you know what? They have made the strides. They're moving in a good direction.
Oh, absolutely. They're moving in a good direction, and I'm very anxious, like most, to see what they look like in the brief time they'll get Ben Simmons back towards the end of this year. Now, it's obviously a huge challenge for Brian Colangelo to look at that backcourt and say, what do I do? I mean, you've got to get yourself a starting point guard, a shooting point guard that can complement Simmons and Embiid. That's got to be priority number one, either at the trade deadline or going into the off season. I mean, they get that guy, and then you might really be onto something. But right now, they're a good team. They're on the rise, but you got to fortify that backcourt.
You think more teams are going to start to go down this path?
The whole Tankapalooza path, or
Tankapalooza? Yeah, just hey, we're going to give up a couple seasons.
No, I don't. Yeah, I just don't think other owners have the stomach for it. I really don't. And look, there is something to be said for clarity in what you're doing. There are teams like Milwaukee that have great clarity, that see themselves as a young, rising team that's going to be good in 2 or 3 years. Then you have the other side of it, teams that like Philadelphia was, which was totally rebuilding and with an eye towards rebuilding for the draft. And now they have, kind of that same clarity that Milwaukee does, in the sense that, they get some more young players. They're going to be in a good position. But, it takes a strong stomach to be willing to go through the 2-3 years that Philadelphia went through. And just based on casual conversations across the league, I just don't think other owners have that stomach for it.
Chris Mannix with us. You buying Houston?
They're inching up the defensive efficiency ratings, which makes me a little bit more optimistic about their potential in the postseason. I mean, I've had this conversation with Mike D'Antoni about where they need to be defensively. Top 15, he says they're a good team. Top 10, they're truly a contending team. Now they're right in that 15 kind of neighborhood right now, but they've got to get in the top 10 to be a real contender. I mean, they've certainly exceeded expectations, and that matchup with James Harden and Russell Westbrook later tonight, I mean, it's going to be something special. But until they descend at a top 10 level, I don't think you can look at them as a true contender.
Yeah, that's going to be an awesome game tonight. Last night had a little undercard with the Warriors. McCollum last night, he was unbelievable, trying to keep Portland in. It's a shame they didn't have Lillard. Let me ask you, you think Cousins goes someplace? I know they're kind of in the playoff mix, but is his time wearing thin in Sacramento?
No, look, I think management in Sacramento is as motivated as it's ever been to try to find a good deal for Demarcus Cousins. But the obstacle is still the owner. Vivek Ranadive out there still believes that a Demarcus Cousins-led team can have a positive future. This season and the way the 8th spot has looked in the Western Conference with, basically it's going to take like 35 to 40 wins to get into the postseason in the West. That has ownership out there really believing that their first year in a new arena, that even if they get wiped out by Golden State in the first round, just getting into the playoffs would be a major accomplishment. That, to me, makes it less likely that this year they trade DeMarcus Cousins. The most likely scenario is at the end of this summer, at the end of the season, I should say, they offer DeMarcus Cousins one of those 5-year max extensions, and we see DeMarcus tied to this team for the next 6 seasons.
He's Chris Mannix, host of the Chris Mannix Show, weekday afternoons, NBC Sports Radio, 24-hour sports talk network. Download the app, subscribe to the Mannix podcast. Chris, take care, pal.
Anytime.